Hello and welcome to this special interview where we examine a project which is coming up at Mundra in the state of Gujarat in western India. It is going to be the biggest project of its kind, utilizing coal to make PVC, polyvinyl chloride, one of the most widely used plastic products. This project is being set up by the Adani group in its special economic zone. We are going to look at the implications of the project, what it means for the environment. We're going to look at why it is so controversial. We're going to look at the Australia connection to this project. And I'm very happy to welcome here with me Swathi Seshadri. She leads the oil and gas and petrochemicals team of a non-government organization called the Center for Financial Accountability that looks at investments in petrochemicals and seeks to hold investors accountable. She's traveled extensively in the area where this project is coming up. She's been an activist for the last 25 years. Holds a master's degree in social work from the Tata Institute of Social Sciences, worked in different parts of India. Thank you so much, Swathi. If you can outline, for the benefit of the viewers, why is this project so significant? Why is it also very controversial? And then we can look at different aspects of the project and look at it in the wider context of the petrochemicals industry in India.
Sure. So there are several layers that we will have to peel over here, and I'd start with the location of the project. Like you said, it's in Western India, but it's also on the coast, a very ecologically fragile region where this project is coming up, the Mundra region, which is already full of fossil fuel based development. We have 3 big thermal power plants already over there, one of which is actually Adani's own thermal power plant, which is more than 4,000 megawatts of capacity. There are 2 large ports, again owned by Adani, one of them exclusively to import coal. And this is basically a gulf, right? It's in the Arabian Sea, and it's a gulf. And on either side of the gulf, you have very economically fragile regions full of mangroves and protected areas. Both sides of this gulf have been used for fossil fuel development. The northern portion, which is Mundra, which has got the special economic zone by Adani, and the southern part of that gulf actually has the other big fossil fuel company, which is Reliance Industries Limited, and their big refinery. And
they run one of the world's largest petroleum refinery.
Refinery, yes. And they're also India's largest petrochemical manufacturer. And we can get to that detail later. But we need to understand that this gulf has been choked by coal in the north and oil in the south. And therefore, it's not just one project. It is part of a series of projects that have happened, and they've been allowed to happen, by the state government, giving clearance after clearance, both by the state and federal government, allowing for this kind of concentrated fossil fuel based development in an extremely fragile zone where the people are dependent on primary activities like fishing and agriculture, both of which are extremely affected by this. So the context itself becomes a problem and a challenge. And on this point, finally, to say that the local communities who have been resisting these kinds of projects actually have taken the Tata Mundra, they've taken them to court in Washington DC. The local communities have also appealed to the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change regarding this, and the MOFCC actually constituted a committee which suggested, the committee report suggested that there needs to be a cumulative impact assessment and not merely an environmental impact assessment for any further fossil fuel based projects in that region, because one really has no sense of what the collective impact of all these different projects have already on the region and what adding one more would do. And also to remember, this is not the only one. Along with the coal to PVC, the Adani group is also setting up a copper smelter plant in the same, SEZ. So it's a very concentrated place full of toxicity, full of fossil fuel based development, and seeing this as a one-off project is really a big problem, according to the very scientifically led committee that the MOEF has put in place.
Swathi, this proposed new coal to polyvinyl chloride venture, which is going to be set up by a wholly owned subsidiary of the Adani Group's flagship, Adani Enterprises Limited. And this entity, Adani Petrochemicals Limited, has successfully secured a loan from India's largest bank, which is the State Bank of India. And we keep hearing of how big this project is going to be. The last estimate that one heard, that it has gone up over the years, over the last few years, the amount involved has gone up, and the current figure is somewhere in the region of $4.2 billion US dollars, or roughly 34,500 crore. What is the current status of the project, and what is the role of India's biggest bank in financing this venture?
Yeah. So, in terms of clearances, it has received the environmental clearance, which itself is flawed because as the communities have pointed out, there are several issues with the science of this project as well, and we perhaps can look at that later. But right now, the SBI-led consortium of banks, and like you rightly said, it's India's biggest national bank, and their led consortium has committed or in principle agreed, to fund part of the 14,000 crore, in Indian rupees. So they would be willing to fund 14,000 crores of this project. So it's an in principle approval. What we understand is that it's not yet formalized, but there's a clear intention.
It's almost like it's 14,000 crore out of 34,500 crore.
Right. So that's a large seed amount for the company so that they can set it up. What's important to note over here actually is that in another loan to the same group, to same Adani group, when SBI gave them a loan, what they did is after the loan was sanctioned, after all the banks sanctioned the loans, they sold off. After SBI's loan was sanctioned, they kept 5,000 crores and sold off all the other remaining part of the loan to other banks. Now, why would a bank, if it believed it would get back its money, feel the need to sell away all such large portions?
It would argue that this is one way of, spreading its risks.
I don't know if it's about spreading the risks or using their credibility to get other banks to join this consortium. Because if SBI is giving a loan to a company, then it must be good, because SBI is also a credible bank. So while that could be an argument which the bank might well place in front of us, we need to remember that SBI is also putting online its own credibility by raising money for a company whose finances have already been under the scanner, and much has been written, about the ill health, the financial ill health of this company.
Especially after the publication of the Hindenburg Research Report on the 24th of January,
Absolutely.
2023.
Absolutely. So, this is also a bank which is already ridden with NPAs, with non-performing assets.
Non-performing assets, in simple language, is loans that are not repaid.
Right. And
but one could argue that's but natural. The biggest bank would also have the biggest share of non-performing assets or loans that are not repaid.
That's right. And coming to that, if you look at India's huge bad loan story, coal-based projects are principal line item 1. So coal-based projects have a history of turning into NPAs. While it is par course, for a bank to have large, amounts that they lend out, SBI has two issues. One is it's the common people.
It's owned by the The people of this country.
It's owned
a
by the
nationalized
people.
bank.
It is your fruit sellers and your, small shop owners and people who have little money to, save, that they open that account. It's also standing on the dreams of these workers and, the millions of workers who are putting away their money in trust in this bank, that they will hold it in trust and faith. And that's online. That's online, but having said that, it's even worse when SBI uses its credibility to entice other banks to come and put their money into a project. It's actually not their credibility. It's not for them to sell their credibility. Right. It's really the people's money that is going into these projects and which they're jeopardizing.
Okay. Swathi, I'd like you to elaborate a little bit on this particular project, the coal to PVC polyvinyl chloride project of the Adani conglomerate to Australia. Now, the proposed plant is going to be set up in roughly a 3 square kilometer area and would use over 3 million tons of coal that would be imported. And this coal is going to be imported from various parts of the country, including Australia, Russia and other places. Now, it is believed that a very substantial portion of the coal that would be imported would be from the Carmichael mine in Australia, which is operated by the Adani Group. And that's located in the state of Queensland in northwest Australia. And it's already started sending coal to the Mundra port. And so now the question that is being asked is, why is the Australia connection so important? Is it because it's the same conglomerate that is operating both the mine in Australia, the port in India, the special economic zone, which is almost like, it's a specially designated area within which the tax laws that are applicable to the domestic tariff area of the country do not apply. In fact, an SEZ or a special economic zone is akin to a country within a country. Yeah. So why, I would like you to elaborate on the Australia connection and why it is so significant.
You've said much of it already, but the whole point is the backward and forward linkage that the Adani Group is putting together. There is the Carmichael mines in Australia. There's of course their own mines even in Indonesia, and their mines in India. And while on the one hand, the government and Adani are constantly talking of cutting back emissions, they're also increasing their coal-based power plants. And there's just more and more coal that this company is going to keep needing if they keep on, building more and more coal-based, activities, whether it's thermal power plants or even coal to PVC. It should really worry, the Australian government and even the people of Australia that their coal is going to be used for producing a material that is so toxic. It's considered the dirtiest plastic. PVC is considered the dirtiest plastic, and while there have been technological innovations, it continues to be extremely toxic, putting out furans, dioxins and other residual materials. When it's made from coal, there's mercury and asbestos, which are residual matter after PVC is produced. So it is definitely a matter of concern that I would think that the people, we know that the people of Australia have resisted the mines. There is an impact of the mines on their lives.
In fact, what the mine was originally, the size of the project that was originally envisaged, it's today down to less than a fourth of what was originally planned as the world's largest greenfield coal mining project. Yes, please.
Wow. So given that, and we're glad that it's not as large as they wanted it to be, but it's bad enough that now that coal will further come here and will now produce PVC, for not just this country but also for the rest of the world. Because just a minor information is that the government of India keeps saying that we are importing PVC and we need to be self-sufficient.
Hold on, I'm going to come to that a little later. Before that, we know that the Adani Group is the biggest importer of coal to India. It's also has the biggest coal mining operations in India after the public sector, Coal India Limited. That is, they claim they're the world's largest government-owned coal producer. They have 7 subsidiaries. Now, the Adani Group has actively expanded in this area. Now, there is one estimate which says that based on its current production capacity, the Adani Group's mining operations, coal mining operations, account for at least almost 3% of global emissions of carbon dioxide from coal. So actually, instead of transitioning from coal, which is what India is saying to the rest of the world, we are in fact investing more in big coal, in dirty coal. And let me just briefly read out to you a small extract from a study that was done, or a report that was presented by the IEEFA, which the full form of that is International Energy. 1 minute. There we go. There, see, I'm goofing up on that. The name is a little, Institute for Energy, Economics and Financial Analysis. And this is what they say. Any highly capital-intensive greenfield investment in underground coal gasification, coal to gas, coal to oil, coal to methanol, coal to fertilizers, or coal to PVC projects, or any similar coal's alternative usage, is most likely to be a clear repeat of similar historical investment mistakes by China's coal giants, including China Coal and China Shenhua and Jiangxi Lanhua, or in the worst case, may replicate the environmental and economic disaster that now bankrupt Link Energy coal gasification project proved to be for the Australian taxpayers. So why are we taking really the worst from China? Coal to PVC may be the cheapest, but it's also the dirtiest form of making this plastic. Please elaborate.
So, I mean, you quoted IFA. It's still an international organization, but our own Federation of Indian Chamber of Commerce.
Federation of Indian Chambers of Commerce, which is a representative of big business houses.
Big business houses, extremely reputed, influences policy massively. In their report on petrochemicals, have admitted that the coal-based PVC that is made in China is the dirtiest form of PVC. So we have our own big industry, associations admitting that it's a bad idea. And then they go on to say in the absolute same sentence, even without a full stop in between, is that by bringing that technology into India, we will become self-sufficient. So it's so clear. In the same sentence, they say it's the dirtiest form, it's in China, we will bring that and we will be self-sufficient. I think the callousness, the disinterest of the welfare of people is evident. There's nothing hidden here. So why are we bringing that from China? While so many other apps are taboo, we can't use certain apps on our phones because they're produced in China and they're, I'm sure, less harmful than the coal to PVC technology that we are, importing from there. It's bad enough if you make it from oil. Even if we make PVC from oil, it gives out PFAS. These are very toxic substances.
I'll just elaborate. According to one estimate, coal-based plastic creates 3 times the greenhouse gas emissions than conventional plastic. And you're talking about emitting large amounts of particulate matter, which causes eye infection, lung infection, throat irritation, respiratory issues, lung cancer, problems with babies at birth, heart ailments. It releases toxic sulfur dioxide. It goes on and on. I mean,
it also uses twice the amount of energy. So it's not even energy efficient. We're talking of decarbonizing. The last COP, spoke so much about decarbonizing the industry.
COP, you mean the committee
the
of
Conference
party,
of Parties.
Conference of Parties, sorry.
The UNFCCC Conference of Parties.
That's the United Nations.
The Climate Change Convention spoke about, industry decarbonizing in a very big way last year, and then you have, an industry which is using twice the energy that would be used if it was to be made from oil. So one is the toxicity, the other is the energy inefficiency. What happens to our net zero commitments if you're going to keep on?
Explain that a little bit.
So if India says that, we're going to reduce, we will come to net zero by 2070 in terms of emissions, and
2070.
2070.
And what do you mean by net zero?
Well, net zero, very, very simply put, is that it's net zero, it's not zero. So it's just, in my opinion, it's a mathematical calculation where I'm emitting, but then I'm compensating, and therefore it's net zero. It is not that I won't emit at all. But that is a problem, because we're increasing our petrochemical capacity in our country. We are hoping that as of today, it's not coal, it's an oil statistic or oil data, but today apparently we use about 7 to 8% of oil in India is used to produce petrochemicals, but we're hoping to take this to 25%. So India is very much on the route of wanting to become a petrochemical hub in the region, an exporter of petrochemicals, and we talk of even PVC. We are seeing that, sure, we are importing PVC today, we are a net importer of PVC. We have 5 different expansion and greenfield PVC projects coming up, and if all of those would come, that is 4 times what we actually need. Which means that
so the figures that you've given, which are relevant for the financial year that ended in 31st of March 2022, was that the deficit in our domestic production of polyvinyl chloride was only to the tune of 1,435 kilotons.
Correct.
But the planned addition
is 4
across
times.
7 upcoming greenfield and the expansion projects is 4 times this amount.
And also let's understand that 18% of our total demand for plastics is PVC. And the total, it is government schemes which is creating 20% of PVC demand. And and this is data that Plast India Foundation has put out. It's an industry.
It's an industry body.
It's an industry body, and they've gone through all the government schemes, and they've told us which government scheme brings out what potential for PVC use. And if you look at that, basically in the 2021-22 report, they say that 20% of all PVC demand will come from the government schemes itself. So is this a pumped up demand? Is this genuine demand? Also, when the government gives us their arguments, they say we need PVC for pipes, for transporting water, we need it for agriculture because those are the pipes from which the fields are irrigated. The kind of emotional twist they give to it, that you need it for construction, for housing, for agriculture, like this is the common people's issues. But we're also seeing that 20% of that demand is being generated actually by the government. So you wonder if this is some kind of a policy incentive or some kind of a policy push so that there's more and more PVC demand.
The government in fact has announced a production linked incentive scheme, the PLI scheme.
Yes.
What you're suggesting, Swathi, is that the government says something to the rest of the world in international international bodies, United Nations bodies, but it's actually acting in just the diametrically opposite manner, and in this case, to benefit one of the largest corporate conglomerates, headed by Mr. Gautam Adani, who was not very long ago considered to be one of the world's richest men. And so how do you see this in the broader context of the political economy? And this is really my last question to you. What should be done? What, according to you, what would you say? Not just an ordinary citizen, not just an activist like you, what's the way forward?
I mean, I'll retrace a bit before saying what's the way forward. I think there are you spoke about the international conventions. We signed the Minamata Convention in 2018, I think. In 2006,
That's on mercury poisoning.
On mercury poisoning. In 2006, we signed the Stockholm Convention on persistent organic pollutants, or POPs. There is mercury residue in coal to PVC. There is POPs that are, constantly emitted in the PVC production, whether it's oil or coal, it doesn't matter. What then is our commitment in these kind of spaces? I mean, what does it mean for a country to ratify a convention? How are they held accountable? And I think there's a problem because none of those are legally binding. None of these conventions are legally binding. And so last year when the United Nations Environment Assembly 5.2 met and actually adopted a resolution for a legally binding treaty to end plastic pollution, including in the marine environment, and the negotiations are on as we speak. There are 5 negotiation sessions that shall take place, and the third one just got over a couple of weeks ago at Nairobi. And what we are seeing is this double speak, is that in India, we are told that we will ban single-use plastics, but those 19 items which are part of the plastic waste management rules do not include FMCG or fast-moving consumer goods, like our, a packet of crisps or biscuits, or the noodles that that come in these very branded, marketing-oriented, packaging. Those are not included, in the ban. Instead, you have something called the extended producer responsibility, and we won't get into that part of it. But the point is that the set of 19 items that are sought to be banned or are supposedly banned are straws, spoons, packets, the carry bags, etc. And this really, this in a sense, covers only those which the street vendors, for example, use, or small food stalls, would use. So there's almost a penalizing of the small, of the working.
Even as the big conglomerates
continue to
the Reliance Industries of the world, the Adani groups of the world, seek to increase their profits.
Absolutely. And then what you have, so on the one hand at home, this is what it is. On the other hand, we see India, and this is, I mean, these are plenary sessions and are available on YouTube. We don't need to even go there, to see this, is that they're available, and we can all look at those recordings. That India then has a big problem with 3 of the 14 or 15 different aspects being negotiated. Top one is that they do not want any measures on primary plastic polymers. That it should be it should not be covered in the treaty, which means that they would like for polymers to constantly be produced. So it actually defies logic, because if you're really intending to put your money where your mouth is and say we are going to reduce plastic consumption in India, because we're going to phase out and ban all these products, and apparently if the extended producer responsibility law was so good, and if it actually resulted in what they would consider an ending of plastic pollution in the downstream, then why would you need to produce more and more polymers in the upstream? And they absolutely want it off the table.
So what should be done, especially with the Adani Mundra coal to PVC project?
Okay, like many of the European countries, we need to actually phase out of PVC in the first place. Of course, it can't happen overnight. Of course, it's being used for fundamental sectors like agriculture and construction. One does not deny that. Having said that, the water coming through those pipes are poison after a point of time. And so the government really needs to phase out of PVC in the first instance. And actually, in the first instance, this project should not be given approval. SBI needs to take responsibility for the money that's deposited into their accounts and not fund a project which will essentially poison its own, possibly its own depositors. And so SBI needs to step back, number one. The EC clearance, the environmental clearance that has been given has to be revoked, has to be cancelled. There needs to be a moratorium on any further PVC production. The government needs to figure out what can be the alternatives. It's not easy, and the industry needs to also be held accountable, because obviously it's not only the government which is pushing for certain materials, it is the industry which is pushing for it, because that's where the profits are, and they are the ones who are, walking away with a big piece of the pie. And so the government needs to also get the industry to look at alternative materials and to then create a policy framework which would enable, less toxic alternatives, to be produced and used in the country. So these are some of the initial,
Okay.
steps that, yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Swathi,
Thanks.
for explaining in detail the hypocrisy of the government of India. It says something to the world at large. It does just the opposite at home. And thank you for explaining why the giant coal to polyvinyl chloride project, which is coming up in Mundra in Gujarat by the Adani group, needs to be opposed. Thank you very much for being with us on this conversation.